Good morning. Before going into detail, I'd like to say thank you to the NSTF for the invitation. I think Yanti and I were sitting next to each other at an event. So that's in a sense how I got invited, not really very formally. So thank you, Yanti, for being a good dinner partner, as well as ensuring we had great conversations. And I will say I was here a number of years ago during my former days as a Department of Energy technical specialist. So thank you again for inviting me, despite the fact I've changed departments. So essentially, I know the program talks to discussions around green jobs, but really I want to go into detail around the journey in developing a low carbon economy for South Africa. So we've had a presentation from on the National Development Plan, and I think that was really an important part of really setting the scene, because for all of us, the National Development Plan is the plan for the country up to 2030. In each and every government department, private sector company, as well as parastatals, is tasked with implementing the recommendations, as well as giving positive feedback to ensure that those recommendations can be implemented successfully. So just in terms of policy context, at the Department of Science and Technology, we have a mandate. However, our mandate really is around supporting other departments. And really for us, the National Development Plan, like I've mentioned, is the overarching policy for us. But in terms of innovation, there's a number of, I would say, departments and policies which are critical to us. One, industrial policy. The Industrial Policy Action Plan goes into great detail. And in most cases, our research and innovation programs are actually, in most cases, mapped to the areas under the Industrial Policy Action Plan. Secondly, at least for my unit within the Department of Science and Technology, energy policy is really key. So the National Energy Act of 2008 goes into great detail around a number of initiatives around SANETI and so forth. Household electrification, in a sense, most of our technologies that we're pushing, which are alternative, actually have, could be very economical in niche markets, such as off-grid. And last but not least, the Integrated Resource Plan is a very key policy. And then in terms of climate change policy, in terms of, for us, I think it's a National Climate Change Response White Paper, which goes into how we're going to reduce carbon emissions, but in a meaningful way, while ensuring that we don't have a negative impact on those who are vulnerable in our communities. And last but not least, we all know about the Paris Agreement, which was signed on by the country. So this is a commitment that we're making. And actually, from a science and technology point of view, we feel like innovation is key to ensuring that we can meet those commitments without having a negative impact on your economy. And last but not least, White Paper on Science and Technology. This is from 1996, which talks to issues of transforming the science and technology sector. So this talks to transforming to get more blacks and women involved, but also the White Paper on Science and Technology spoke to restructuring what we call the National System of Innovation. And for us, the National System of Innovation is managed by Department of Science and Technology. However, our science councils, universities, as well as private sector play a key role in ensuring that this innovation sector is working effectively. The National Development and Research Strategy talks to those areas where South Africa could be very competitive, and I would say in some cases in South Africa we know we have clear skies, and in some cases we have international funding and international flagship programs which we're running. 10-year innovation plan, this was started in 2008, so this spoke to the challenges that we face as a country, and out of this innovation plan, again, 5 great focal areas for research. And last but not least, under the 10-year innovation plan, the Energy Grand Challenge was identified, and I would say since 2008, we spent probably close to 1.5 billion on R&D across South Africa. So this just really goes into detail, and I think our earlier speaker spoke to investments in infrastructure, affordable tariffs, and diversifying energy resources. So essentially, this is talking to your energy trilemma, which is balancing security with ensuring you can have affordable access, as well as ensuring you basically protect the environment. Like I said, and the National Climate Change Response Strategy talks to the peak, plateau, and decline. So I think we're all aware of that. And then I think really key was about Industrial Policy Action Plan. So in a sense, in most cases, most of our research programs speak to reindustrializing South Africa, and in most cases, looking at local beneficiation. And if you look at many of the resources, I guess key resources globally, like platinum, we have 80% plus. In terms of titanium, we have a large amount. In terms of manganese, we have a large amount. But currently in South Africa, what we're doing in most cases, which is extracting the ore and just shipping it to other countries like Japan, China, which actually beneficiate the ore and sell it back to us as batteries or other value-added products. And like I said, last but not least, energy sector is critical. And like I said, with the Department of Energy, which was really put in place in 2009, we've seen a large uptake of new technologies in the country, but also we've seen a situation where the country has, in most cases, actually leapfrogged other countries when it comes to a renewable energy IPP program. So in terms of our context, like I said, we're looking at working towards a low carbon economy. So for us, how are we responding as a country? And I think what's critical is that in terms of the Department of Environmental Affairs, we have flagship programs. And these flagship programs speak to key areas in which we think as a country we can intensify our reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And this is with a focus on certain technologies. And in terms of the ones in red, these are the flagship programs that we do have a contribution to. And this is from a technology point of view. In terms of renewables, we have programs around solar, wind, as well as biofuels. I'll get into detail later. For a number of years, we have funded research in energy efficiency at University of Pretoria. I think we've spent over 8 years, maybe around 20, 30 million. Transport flagship programs, and I'll give you details as to how we fund research in electric vehicles, fuel cell vehicles, and we have funding across different institutions as well as TIA, our Technology Innovation Agency. And last but not least, the last flagship program, which was added last year, is one focused on hydrogen fuel cells, research and development innovation. And really under this flagship program, we've intensified our deployments, where by the end of 2020, March 2020, we would have deployed over 21 hydrogen fuel cell technologies across many sectors, be it hydrogen fuel cell buses, stationary fuel cells, one we deployed in Northwest last weekend, as well as even in some cases looking at unmanned aerial vehicles, in a sense with companies such as CSR as well as Denel. So in terms of decarbonization, I think to date a lot of focus has been on the energy sector. Most times we spend our time worrying about how Eskom is deploying power plants, renewable energy IPP program. And I think we've made great progress in that sector. But I think what's the challenges now is we've been really in some cases ignoring the transport sector. And I think we're doing that at our own peril. If you think about what's happening in the news, different manufacturers of vehicles are mentioning that they're going to stop producing and manufacturing internal combustion engines. And as we know in South Africa and Eastern Cape, we have, basically we were manufacturing our fossil fuel vehicles. And the question is, as a country, what are we going to do about that? I know we have the Green Transport Strategy, which is I think in progress through the Department of Transport. And for us, even when it comes to vehicles, we're looking at battery electric vehicles in South Africa in our transport system. And this is looking at both public and private, as well as hydrogen fuel cell technologies, like in terms of buses and actually passenger vehicles. I remember about 2015, our now president, Cyril Ramaphosa, when he was a vice president of the country, deputy president of the country, he actually was in Japan for a state visit, and he actually rode in a Japanese vehicle that was passenger hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. And I remember when DST, we were in cabinet, he mentioned the experience. So basically, you ride in this vehicle, there's no emissions except for water, and actually to some extent, it's so quiet that you don't even know if the car is running. So I guess as a country, when it comes to transport sector, are we going to start moving from fossil fuel-based manufacturing to new vehicles, battery electric vehicles, as well as fuel cells? And really, how are we going to go about that? And as a Department of Science and Technology, we're actually, like I said, I always love my job because I don't have to, when I spend money today, I don't have to account for it today, I have to account for it in 10 years. So you don't know if my decisions were successful or not. And even as a new chief director, I can also benefit from the decisions 10 years from now and then reap the rewards for decisions and efforts from 10 years. And I'm saying this in a sense because in most cases, our research programs have been in place for over a decade. I can say that over 10 years, we funded close to 2,000 master's and PhD students in energy. I can say over this time period that we probably graduate close to 400 master's and PhD graduates. And in most cases, from a transformation point of view, in most cases we can say, even at our universities like Stellenbosch and UCT, we have transformation targets in place, and we've been able to get 50 to 60%, if not higher. And this is an energy engineering technical sector. So, like I said, we're always working in a 10-year decadal point of view. I don't look at 12 months, and that's actually one of the best things about my job. So in terms of the DST, so I think, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the DST. We're not in the news very often, but really our job is to create prosperity and well-being for the country through science, technology, and innovation. And we do that by providing leadership, an enabling environment, and resources for the science and technology base to grow. And how we do that in most cases is, in some cases, we may fund research programs at key institutions for close to 15, 20 years. And in some cases, we have research programs that are approved by cabinet even from 2007 that we're still implementing today. Second to that, in terms of resources, most cases is money. Like I said, on average, Department of Science and Technology, we spend about 8 billion rands a year on research and technology. The unit that I work in, we spend about 200 million a year, and I would say on average per year to fund research and development in energy sector. And in terms of the work, like I said, it's not implemented through the Department of Science and Technology. It's implemented through our implementing agencies such as science councils, universities. Even the NSTF is one of the organizations that DST goes to implement some of our key objectives. In terms of R&D expenditure, the consensus is out there. 10 years ago, we would have never thought that we would have an energy mix using renewables and wind to the level that we have now. And I think over time, what happens is you see with research and development, the cost of your energy technologies, which are considered alternative maybe 10 years ago, but now conventional, has gone down over time. And this is just really just an example of the cost reductions that have been shown based on per technology, thermal storage, we see the different power plants, solar fields that have happened because of research and development. Now, in terms of the Energy Grand Challenge, like I'm saying, in 2008, I think this was probably around the time that we were having power outages in the country. So even at that time, that's why energy was considered a challenge for the country. And I think even today, 10 years later, it's still a challenge, and probably a challenge prior to the next decade. So essentially, we didn't really pick and choose winners. So we're looking at the fact that we have the energy mix is basically based on coal at the time. So if you can't necessarily get rid of the coal fleet, let's look at clean coal technologies. At the time, we had a nuclear power plant in Cape Town, so we also do nuclear energy research. Renewable, of course, because of the fact that we have the solar resource in the country. And I think in terms of the last focal area is on the hydrogen economy. And this is looking at the fact that we have majority of the PGMs in this country, and how do we beneficiate what we have existing. And really the full-time job I have is to increase knowledge generation and exploitation. This means that I create the implementing agencies that we fund, create papers, and this is in international journals, as well as patents. It's important, I'm not sure if there's any academics in the room, but it's always important to protect your knowledge. Because if you don't protect it, someone else will use it and make money off of it. And I will say that over time, even this past financial year, we had about 10 patents that were registered, most times, locally of course, but most times in Japan, Germany, or Europe, US, and so forth. And this has grown over time. I'll say in previous years we have 2 to 3, but now our academics are really protecting the knowledge. Human capital development, and like I said, I've mentioned that really you don't want to create a new sector without having employees who are local. So in most cases, most of our effort has been at universities. So we've been producing the masters and PhDs, but now we're finding that we really don't need so many masters and PhDs. We actually need our technical colleges graduates. So technology, TUTs, VUTs, and also we're now finding we need TVET graduates. So even our program is expanding to see how we can fund the TVET graduates. Knowledge infrastructure. So this in most cases is labs, equipment, and in some cases, like I say, over a 3-year period on one program, we can spend between 30 to 40 million just on pilot facilities, which become pre-commercial, and enablers to address innovation chasm. So we always know you produce lots of knowledge, probably lots of papers, and only so much of that knowledge goes to market. And really, my full-time job is moving technology from lab to market. And in most cases, we do have a number of spin-out companies that have sales. We even have I think there's one at Stellenbosch that has a 10-year spin out from Stellenbosch that has a 10 million rand turnover every year. So it's, excuse me? At Stellenbosch University, one of the spin out companies, GeoSun, has a 10 million rand turnover every year. So this is, like I said, surprisingly, this is the work we do at the Department of Science and Technology. So I know it seems like we're very academic, but really it's around knowledge utilization for economic development. And really under the Energy Grand Challenge, we have a number of flagship programs. The first one is Hydrogen in South Africa, and I'll really go into detail later. We have the Renewable Energy Hub and Spokes program, which again has been in place since 2008. We have an energy storage research and development program that just started, I would say, about 3 years ago. We have an advanced biofuels program. And in most cases, these programs are actually supporting specific policies at the Department of Energy. So the biofuels program is supporting the biofuels industry strategy of 2007. The Center for Energy Systems Analysis and Research. So this is a flagship program at SENETI, which is looking at policy analysis and important information, and Energy Efficiency and Demand Side Management Hub. Like I said, this has been in place since 2008 and I think have had great impact. So I won't go into detail on all of them, but I'll focus on maybe the first 4. So in terms of the, like I said, solar technology overview, like I said, our Renewable Energy Hub and Spokes program, which has a focus on solar and wind, is really in place to support the Department of Energy and, as well as environmental affairs aspirations to actually have more solar in the country. So if you look at the IRP, and this is from 2010, so bearing in mind that's the only policy to date that I know that has been approved by cabinet. So this does not mean that we ignore what's going on, but like I said, everything has to be official. So in the IRP, we have both PV and CSP, which have been fed in, or have been options. Granted, most of the PV has actually more, I would say, actually has gained more traction than CSP, but we, like I said, as a DST, we support both. And this is just statistics that you can find online through the IRP.